I think you'll hear throughout this debate a fair amount of unity on one fact, that we are in a crisis. One of homelessness, one of housing in this state, and I would add a third, which is the climate emergency. Now, some in the environmental community have spoken up in favor of this measure, as I have throughout my career, in fact, that we need more housing near transit to reduce the amount people drive, so we can reduce the amount of petroleum we use, so we can reduce the amount of pollution in this state. And I agree with that premise. I also agree that we do need to build more. But I do not believe that in order to meet the challenges of those crises, that we have to create new ones. And we can only look back to last fall, and throughout these last years, where wildfires have torn through not the hinterlands, but a new class of neighborhood, extending deeper into our communities than ever before. They call this the WUI, the Wildland-Urban Interface. And those of you who had people lose homes or lose their lives know these areas now all too well. They look beautiful, and they're also deadly. And it's time we stop developing as a state into the wildland-urban interface, period. There is no law on the books right now in the state of California that limits that hunger for growth into those regions. And what we're going to be doing is burning more and more Californians' homes down, the more we build in there. In turn, we're going to tax our insurance system. We're going to put a drain on local governments, and ultimately, as the receivers up here, we're going to end up footing the bill for taxpayers in California. So we're going to have a debate about housing today. And so I want to tell you about one example. When the Woolsey fire tore through the district I represent, the people I work for, burned a lot of people I know's homes down, burned my place down, burned a lot of my friends down. I could get back on my feet, though. I got a family that I could go crash on their couch, and got an education and a good job here, and could pull myself back up. But a lot of people haven't been able to. What's happening now in cities all throughout that region hit by that fire and so many other fires is, under even current law, they're being forced to plan new housing developments, multifamily projects in that same area that just burned down. Literally in the ashes of the Woolsey fire, I have cities that are trying to now, to meet state law, build further into that area. That seems incredibly backwards to me. And I would note that the author from San Francisco and I have had conversations about this issue. And I believe he's sensitive to it. I don't impugn any intent here. But those of you who tell you that the bill exempts high fire severity zones from any of this upzoning we're talking about here today is misreading the text. And I'll quote here for a moment from the bill. So in section 65918.22, those of you reading along, you can go to the top of page 46, which essentially says that if you're in a very high fire severity zone, you're not going to be impacted by the upzoning required unless you've adopted a mitigation measure, quote unquote, a mitigation measure. Every single city I work for has adopted some kind of mitigation measure. Therefore, every single one of those cities is still in, and they're still subject to the upzoning in this bill. People call it an exemption. Well, the exemption to the exemption has holes you could drive a truck through. Now, I know the authors expressed interest in trying to close some of those loopholes, and that's part of this sort of work in progress versus try to get it right the first time conversation we're going to have today. But this vote is too serious to just trust in the process and let it go. You know, we all have to go home and be true to our folks. But I can't in good conscience support this bill today knowing that I'm making the problem worse. Now, there have been exemptions granted in this legislation, to be clear. Those communities may not have been exempted, but certainly communities living in counties under 600,000 have. Now, to those counties, they still are subject to some upzoning requirements near key transit hubs. So there will still be some modest upzoning in those smaller counties if they've got a train line going through. But I don't care that Malibu is out of this bill. I grew up there. I love that community, but they're not the folks that I'm talking about here today. And frankly, if Malibu and Marin are out, or San Luis Obispo is out, but San Joaquin is in, I don't get the why there. That Santa Barbara is out, but Ventura County is in, I don't get the why. Thomas Fire tore through that area. Doesn't matter, people don't know what side of the county they're on always, but it tore through their neighborhoods just the same. Why different treatment? So I struggle with that disparate treatment when it comes to these exemptions we built into this legislation. And part of me wants to say, well, get my exemption. I want to get those other cities out. I want to cut that deal. Help me get Agoura Hills out. Help me get Westlake out and Calabasas, and let me cut that deal, save the folks back home from this fear of more fire, and then I'll have done my job. But I can't in good conscience make this a bill about deals and exemptions. I truly believe in the purpose that the author's putting forward here, that we actually do need a housing solution in this state that takes into account all these risks, but doesn't make the problem worse. I appreciate all the work that's been done. And I recognize that if the bill makes it out of this House today, yes, it could change. But we do not have to exacerbate the climate crisis while we try to solve it. That is a false choice. I believe we can get this right, to push for generosity, not to empower NIMBYism, but to say, yes, in the right backyards. The land has to dictate the use. And when the land is too dangerous, we have got to say no. And when the community is right, we do have to say yes. So I am ready to say yes, but we've been through too much trauma to force this on those who have been torn down and all the costs that come with it, human, fiscal, and otherwise. So I regretfully rise in opposition to this measure and do appreciate all the hard work done so far.
Ayes 18, noes 15. The measure fails.